Hi, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by to join me today. I really do appreciate it. My name is Ellie, and I'm a witch. And this over here is my teaching assistant, Andy, and today is Monday, and on my channel that means it is Misheard History, and today's Misheard History topic is Sawney Bean. So I will say that I went into this topic under the assumption that it would be pretty straightforward, maybe a little short, but simple. That clearly is not the case, which is why I said that. This won't be a terribly long video, but there are several different parts that I need to touch on. Now, be warned, this story does revolve around cannibalism, so if that is not something that you are up for, totally understand, but now is your time to make a swift exit. Thank you for joining me for this short time though. For the rest of us, it is time to buckle up. Alexander Sawney Bean is a figure in Scottish folklore. He was born in the 16th century in East Lothian, though at the time it was called Haddingtonshire. His father had been a ditch digger and had passed the knowledge of the trade to Alexander, who did not continue the legacy. As a young adult, he left home with a woman by the name of Agnes Douglas, a woman who had been accused of being a witch. Now, the couple shared cannibalistic tendencies and partook in the horrific act on their way to a coastal cave in Benane Head. They settled in this cave for 25 years as it was well hidden. Together, the two had 14 children, 6 girls and 8 boys, and 32 grandchildren, 14 girls and 18 boys. Now, the grandchildren came around due to incest between their children, allegedly. The family did not hold regular jobs, instead relying on ambush robberies. Obviously, the bodies of their victims would be taken to the cave, dismembered, and eaten. In some cases, they would pickle any leftovers. To avoid discovery of the crimes, the family would stage some of the deaths to look like it was an animal attack. This tactic did hold up for a time because the cave was concealed at high tide and the family only attacked at night, so the nearby villagers were none the wiser that there were murderers nearby. As time went on, people got suspicious and so searches were launched. The cave was actually considered, but at the time, it wasn't believed that any human could fit inside, so the family was safe. Several innocent people were hung for the crime, though. A lot of suspicion was leveraged at innkeepers, oftentimes because they were the last to see any passing travelers. The family one night made an error after a fair. A couple had been riding from the fair when the family jumped out of the bushes. The wife fell off the horse and was captured, later being cannibalized. The husband, though, was trained and armed. He was able to fight the family off. He was then rescued when more people from the fair were traveling the same path. The family escaped, and the man was taken to the local magistrate the next day. And with the family being discovered, the king at the time, now that is assumed to be King James VI, but that is not verifiable, sent out a team of over 400 men and many bloodhounds. The hounds led the searchers to the cave that had been previously dismissed. Inside, they found the family along with human remains hung on the walls and in barrels, along with stolen goods from their robberies. What actually happened at this point is debated. The commonly accepted version is that the whole family was captured and that they didn't put up a fight. They were then taken to a jail in Edinburgh, then transferred somewhere else, seemingly Leith or Glasgow, where they were executed. They did not have trials as they were considered subhuman and unfit to stand trial. Now, it gets a little graphic at this point. Fair warning. The men in the family had their genitals cut off, as well as their hands and feet, being left to bleed out. The women were tied to stakes and burned. These punishments most closely resemble the punishments of those found guilty for treason. Now, the other version out there is that the searchers just blew up the cave upon discovery with the family inside. Now, this sounds like a crazy story, because it is just a story. There have been debates as to whether or not this story is real. Between you and me, it just isn't. Before I give you the full picture, let's backtrack to the mid-1300s, roughly 200 years before Sawney Bean was even born. Andrew Christie, more commonly known as Christie Cleek, was a butcher in Perth. There was a rather severe famine going on, and so Andrew joined a group of scavengers. When one of the members died of starvation, Andrew put his butchering skills to use and prepared the body. After this, the group developed a taste for human flesh, so they started to ambush travelers. They would often eat the horses of the victims as well. It is alleged that 30 men were killed by the group. The group was eventually captured, but in some accounts, Andrew got away and changed his name. Much shorter of a tale, for sure, but this is what people think the origin of Sawney Bean legends are. It's just a lesser known version. Now, I said that this is not, like, the whole thing isn't real, and I don't believe in this older version anymore. Going back to the Bean version, though, the reason that I, and most others, know this story is fake is that the character is Scottish, but the story did not originate in Scotland. The first stories about this legendary cannibal came from England. Now, England and Scotland have a very rough history, to say the least. The whole lions versus unicorn thing is a cartoonized way to look at the dispute. Overall, they didn't get along. England has always been big on conquering, or just straight up stealing land. Scotland was no stranger to this. There were even English-born settlers in southern Scotland. It was well known that England did have supporters that lived in Scotland. A theme that we see in the 17th to 18th centuries was an anti-unionism attitude, meaning the people wanted Scotland to be independent and did not want to be under the rule of the current English king. This idea gave rise to the Jacobite Rebellion. An incredibly abridged version of the rebellion was that the Scottish people wanted to remain independent, and they wanted Bonnie Prince Charlie to sit on the throne. At the end of the day, the rebellion failed, but it showed the discontent of the people. England was happy to create these false stories to slander Scotland, and we see that since the first stories of Sawney Bean were published in the mid to late 1700s. It wasn't until after the Jacobite Rebellion failure that the stories were published in Scotland. And there are people who believe the stories, and to a degree, I get it. To the extent that the story go, no, of course not, but in the case of people like Andrew Christie, that was need-based. There were famines, so the idea that people resorted to cannibalism is not unrealistic. There are cannibals out there, or people who were forced into cannibalism. I mean this very literally. If you give me an era in human history, I can find multiple documented cases of cannibalism. Sometimes it is need-based. Look at the Arctic exploration of 1845 to 1848. That was out of desperation. We also have the whole thing with, like, Wendigo, a whole creature based off the cannibalistic tendencies that some people express, both need-based and not so need-based. So yes, it is totally possible that there is a real-life version of Sawney Bean, just not to the extent that the story says. Same thing with the incest thing, that is likely just to slander the Scots, make them seem like brutes, and just the most vile people out there. You will have to let me know what you guys think though as to whether or not you believe it or you don't, to whatever degree. And that is all that I have for you today. This one was crazy. I really did think it was gonna be like super straightforward. It could have been. I could have like ignored like the extra history or Scotland versus England thing, but I didn't want to because I think that that's an interesting talking point when it comes to stuff like this and where legends come from and other stuff like that, because it's not something you really think about or would have considered. If I just told you a crazy story about a Scottish cannibal, you'd been like, that's crazy, and then moved on and not even thought about it further. So yeah, I thought that was super interesting, and I mean it in the most literal sense possible what I said. If you give me an era in human history, I will give you a cannibal case. Even let's go BCE, or BC. Give me something and I'll tell you several cases. It's crazy that that's such like a well-documented thing in human history, is just cannibalism. And like need-based cannibalism, I get it, it's unfortunate, but I get it because it's happened. And we've documented cases of need-based cannibalism happening. So yeah, it sucks, but it is what it is. And so yeah, it makes sense that there could be a real-life version of this guy, and that there are so many cases that we know of when it comes to cannibalism. I was gonna say if you guys want me to talk about cannibalism, and then I changed my mind because I don't really want to. But like, if you guys want like a specific era in history, then I'll let you guys know what it is, and I'll give you that information in the comments. I don't want to make a whole video about cannibalism, sorry. So yeah, stuff coming up. I said it last week. I'll say it again today. The only stuff that I have coming up for the next month and a week is going to be 3 more Fatal Alignment videos. 1 this month at the very end of this month, and then 2 next month. 3, maybe 4 reading nook videos. And then maybe some stuff on the second channel, or I'll prep some stuff for the second channel. But yeah, don't miss me too bad, but I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye!